Hi, everyone. This is Joel Rosenberg in Jerusalem. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of All Israel News. And as you know, we are just hours away from Election Day. I mean, people say this every single time, but it does feel like the highest stakes and maybe sharpest contrast in an election year, presidential election year that I've ever seen. I'm 57 and tensions are high and the stakes are high. And in the interest of what we're trying to do at All Israel News, which is to do what sometimes the mainstream media doesn't do, which is be fair, give people a chance to make their case, both sides, regardless of our own personal views. All Israel News is a nonprofit media organization, and we're therefore nonpartisan. So we haven't taken a position. That makes it sound a little like the Washington Post or the LA Times right now, and that's not us. But joining us today here on All Israel News is former Biden-Harris ambassador to Israel, Tom Nides. Tom's Jewish. Tom's from Minnesota. Tom's a Midwestern nice guy. He was the Deputy Secretary of State under Hillary Clinton when she was Secretary of State during the Obama-Biden year. So he knows Joe Biden and Kamala Harris really well. And I'm just grateful to you. I got to know you, Ambassador, when you were here in Israel as ambassador, and both privately, but also doing some interviews. Thank you. Thank you for letting me just chat with you in these, just laying out the case for why you believe Kamala Harris is the right person and what you think U.S. policy towards Israel and the broader Arab Muslim world, and of course Iran, would look like in a Harris-Walz administration. First of all, just great to see you.
Well, thank you very much, pal. Anytime you ask me to do it, I'm more than happy to do it. We were friends and continue to be friends when I was in Israel, and I enjoy our relationship, and I'm honored to be here. Let me just, as you know, and as you rightfully said, I'm a kid from Minnesota. I'm the youngest of 8 kids. I grew up as a Reformed Jew. And being Jewish to me was kind of in my kishkas, meaning it wasn't just being a Jew. It was about what it means to be a Jew. It's about the community. It's about getting involved. It's about being in the game and being a participant, an active participant. My father.
And let's just say, for those who aren't familiar with Yiddish, sort of kishkis in your guts, in your soul.
In my gut. Sorry, throw a little
who you
Yiddish.
are.
Throw a little Yiddish at your team. But I think it's important to understand. My father was the president of UGA, the president of our temple. My mother was the head of Hadassah. These are big Jewish organizations in my little small town. So I learned from a very early age is what it means to be Jewish, as it means to be a Christian, which is to get involved in your community, care deeply about society and what society means. So I come from my position as Israeli ambassador with that in mind, and so with that as a context. I'm also a man of action. I'm a man of words really are interesting, but what did you do for me today? What were the actions that prove the case? And the issue for me for Vice President Harris is quite frankly very clear. Okay, first of all, I would never support Vice President Harris unless I believed in my kishkas that she was going to be a strong, committed president for the security of the state of Israel, and I mean that not just in words but in actions. And I literally on Monday, just 2-3 days ago, I flew to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with Doug Emhoff, who was the second gentleman, who's Vice President Harris's husband, and he asked me to come with him for his final big speech. And where was his final big speech? It was at the Tree of Light Synagogue, or adjacent building to the Tree of Light Synagogue. And for those of your listeners who don't recall, sadly, about 6 years ago, the single biggest massacre of Jews at a synagogue took place in Pittsburgh. And he gave a speech that day about fighting anti-Semitism and hate. This was his closing statement, his closing message to people. And he, as you know, maybe your viewers don't know, he has spent the last 3+ years traveling around the world talking about the importance of anti-Semitism, fighting anti-Semitism. It's not just about anti-Semitism for Jews. It's about hate. And he has done an exceptional job. And for the first time, the vice president, along obviously with the president, we created the U.S. national strategy countering anti-Semitism. We never had that before, but that was action. That was this is like when you get in the game and do something real and people say, okay, now I understand how she thinks, because obviously he couldn't do this unless she wanted him to do it. So I'm a big believer in how her as president and what she has said as vice president about how she's going to be president, including, most important to me, she has Israel's back. That she strongly supports the ability for Israel, one, to defend itself, to destroy Hamas, to destroy Hezbollah, to basically secure Israel and provide Israel all what they need to make sure that small Jewish state that we all so love is secure from its enemies that surround it.
Well, so I appreciate this, and one of the things I love about this opportunity to chat with you, especially in the final stretch here of this hugely important campaign, is I like to talk to people who are in the room when I can, and I like to take our viewers and listeners into people who know Kamala Harris, who know Joe Biden, who know Doug Emhoff. By the way, for those who may not realize, I just want to be super clear. Doug Emhoff is Jewish. So whatever else you think of Kamala Harris as the vice president, whether you agree with her or disagree with her, many Americans, at least many evangelicals who may not be supporting her, may not realize actually what Doug has been up to, that he himself is Jewish, that Kamala married a Jewish man, and so forth. And so that's important. It's also important, obviously, we've had David Friedman. I've interviewed him, and we're trying to do this, on both sides. To kind of frame this, there was a Wall Street Journal poll just a few days ago. This is now, admittedly, this is a poll that showed that the dynamic had shifted somewhat from Harris up by a couple points a month ago, and now Trump up by a few points now. That's not the point I want to focus on. What I want to drill into is some of those internal numbers where they asked who would be the best presidential candidate to address the Hamas war with Israel and the Hezbollah war with Israel. That surprised me, I will tell you, because I would have thought those numbers would be a little closer. But 49% said Trump would be best, and only 34% said Harris. So there's a perception issue that I would like you to address, right? Now, anybody who's listening to me that thinks, oh, Trump and JD, they should definitely be in it, then they'll think that's a good thing. But I want you to explain why you don't agree with that. But there is a 15-point gap there, which I think is worth discussing for a moment.
So let's all step back and ask ourselves the question: how much better could Joe Biden and Kamala Harris be towards the state of Israel? Okay. I think people understand that Israel will never be the same after October 7th. Joe Biden went to Israel on 4 days after October 7th. In fact, if you look at my wall right here, here's a picture of Joe Biden and I in Ben Gurion Airport on his 10th visit to the state of Israel. That was in the middle of COVID with the old fist bump.
Fist bump, yeah.
This president and vice president has stood by the state of Israel during its most important crisis ever, okay? From October 7th, from the attack of Hamas to the first Iranian attack, to the second Iranian attack, that he moved ships and ammunition and the most impressive defense systems that we've ever had into Israel to protect the state of Israel. Even last Friday, where 182 ballistic missiles were shot into Israel. One of the reasons why Israel was able to defend itself was the support of this administration, the coordination of this administration, to make sure that Israel was protected, including, as I pointed out earlier, the most sophisticated defense system that was arrived a week before Israel's retaliation of the attack. Okay, so every single step. So what I'd like to say to people: judge them on their actions, judge them on what they have done. And to be clear to many of your listeners, this has not come without a political price for Kamala Harris. the strong support for the state of Israel. Make no mistake, there are people in her own party that think we have been too pro-Israel, okay? Too pro-Israel. But she has been steadfast in her support, her steadfast in her condemnation of Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran. And she has said over and over and over again that she was not going to condition aid to the state of Israel. And she said over and over again she was not going to let Iran obtain a nuclear weapon. I just don't know how anyone could have done more than she has done and Joe Biden has done for the state of Israel. And you're talking to the former Israeli ambassador. And so I'm not going to sit here and talk about Donald Trump, okay? Because the conversation is not about, listen, I think Donald Trump has done a lot of great things vis-a-vis the state of Israel, and principally the Abraham Accords. And Joel, you and I have talked about this 100 times. I was a huge supporter of the Abraham Accords. Yes. But as you know, for me as a Jew, the security state of Israel is exceptionally, exceptionally important. And there are other issues to me as a Jew, as like many of your viewers as being Christians, as they think about humanity and they think about respect and they think of dignity. Those are part and parcel of who they are as your listeners. And so as I make my decision of who I support, if you're making your decision based upon the strength and support of Israel, I would say we've got that check. And then your viewers will need to listen about all the other pieces of how both these candidates talk about other issues that are concerning to them, and hope they'll come to the conclusions that are what they believe in their hearts.
So just to be clear, why do you believe there's a 15-point gap currently between the perceptions of who would be better to deal with these wars? I'm hearing the case, and I'm glad that's why you're on. I want you to make your case.
I don't know which poll you're talking about. I could send you. Listen, the reality of this is Kamala Harris will receive 72 to 74% of the Jewish vote. Okay, it's happened over the last 30 years. Maybe it'll be down 2 points, maybe it'll up 2 points. But the Jewish voters who vote on this issue, okay, on this particular issue, they will overwhelmingly support the vice president. That is a fact. Okay. Yep. As it relates to other, we don't know. We'll see what happens on election day. As you point out, it's hours away or days away. We'll find out if I'm right or you're right. The reality of this is.
Oh, I'm not taking a position. I'm really genuinely.
No. I know you're reading.
I actually don't know why in this particular case, because one of the things that you probably don't know even, that I've worked very hard to call the balls and strikes best I can without being a partisan. And when President Biden has done things that I thought that's the right thing, I'm not, that I don't come from his world. I don't come from your world. But when he came to Israel, we gave him extraordinary coverage. We praised him. We continue to do that. The fact that he's funded, tens of billions of dollars worth of continued military aid to Israel, absolutely vetoed pernicious, cruel UN resolutions against Israel. Now there have been areas I disagree as well, but I'm just so I'm not trying to make I'm not trying to have the debate here. I'm just trying to. I want people to.
No, I don't think you're
face and how you respond to various questions. Yeah,
totally agree with you. What you're mentioning is polls that are produced. My view of this is very simple. Just judge Kamala Harris and on her actions, and if you look at those actions and say, okay, I understand the position, and she's been very clear about the things that she believes in vis-a-vis the security of the state of Israel, then you should support her. I strongly believe if you're a voter who your number one issue is security of the state of Israel, I'm telling you from where I sit as someone who's probably as well-informed as anyone is vis-a-vis this issue, you can go to sleep at night realizing that she has Israel's back. So I come at it not from dismissing Donald Trump's position on Israel, because I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is tell you why I think Kamala Harris should be the next president of the United States. And I think is someone who cares deeply about Israel and cares deeply about the security of the state of Israel. And that, for me, is as important as any issue that I can imagine.
Okay. Two last questions. And I'm so intrigued with and grateful for your perspective. I'm going to ask you about another poll. I know you're not a big fan of discussing polls at this stage, but there was a poll out in Israel on Sunday, which actually shocked me because the gap is even wider. 66% of Israelis, Jewish Israelis, said that they support Trump, and 17% said Harris. And now I would have thought that would might be a 45-45 or a 55-45, or that again, that's a dramatic perception issue inside Israel, which doesn't fit your view as
I
someone
don't know.
who knows
Again,
Israel really
Joe,
well.
Joe, again, I love you, man, but I don't know what polls you're. I'm sure if I go and look at, a bunch of polls in Israel, I could probably find Harrods polls that have different numbers. But I'm not
Okay,
here to.
okay.
I'm not here to argue about
All
polls.
right, let's talk policy then.
Here's what I'm here to make sure your viewers understand. Last Friday night, Israel attacked Iran. Okay. Israel knew and informed the United States. I'm not disclosing anything that hasn't already been reported.
That's public.
Coordinated with the United States, told the United States when it was happening. And one of the reasons Israel did that is they knew, number one, that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris had Israel's back. Okay. They knew if the counterattack happened by Iran, that we were there to protect Israel. Literally 2.5 weeks before Friday, one of the most significant attacks, you were there, I think, one of the most significant attacks in Israel's history. Over 185 ballistic missiles were shot in Israel. I'm told by my friends in Israel, and I have hundreds and hundreds of friends in Israel, like you do, who said it was one of the most terrifying nights they've had because of the sound of the Iron Dome going off and then them shooting down the debris. It was frightening. And one of the reasons why very, very, very little damage happened to the state of Israel was because of the support of the United States. Now, to be clear, Israel is very capable of protecting themselves, but they knew we had their back. We had ships in the Mediterranean. We had our head of CENTCOM in Israel at the time, managing the crisis, coordinating the region. This is what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have done in the most substantial, real way. I mean, this is not like made up. This is not, and by the way, at huge political costs. Okay, at huge political costs. And so you can share with me a poll of what this group of Israelis believe. I can assure you, I call Peace Now one of your favorite groups, and I'm sure I can provide you a poll that has 82% of Israelis support Kamala Harris. So you and I won't do that because that's silly. But what I will say to you, when it matters, now if that support wasn't there, your interviewing questions to me should be, why didn't America back up Israel? Why didn't America send the troops or send the equipment they needed? Why didn't Israel? Because you couldn't ask me those questions, did you know? Because you know, and I know that the United States, that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris has Israel back, and we should. To be clear, this is the most important. It's the only democracy in the Middle East. It's an emotional connection between your Christian voters and my Jewish voters and each of our voters. Everyone, our friends and family, care deeply, emotionally about the state of Israel. That's who we are as people. That's who we are. And I don't care. Israel should not be a partisan issue. It should be a bipartisan issue. The security of the state of Israel should be a bipartisan issue. And Donald Trump needs to make sure he keeps talking about it as a bipartisan issue. And Kamala Harris needs to be that. And we shouldn't be pitting Democrats and Republicans against Israel. It's not good for Israelis. It's not good for Jews, and it's not good for Christians.
That's a great way to end, Tom, because yes, I think, if we were to drill into further on how, Biden Harris, encouraged Netanyahu to handle Rafah, we might disagree on this or that. But the point is, this last point you're making is a really important point. And I want to make it to the All Israel News viewers and listeners, which is, look, there are going to be policy and some of it's nuanced, some of it's bigger, but in the grand scheme, there is so much bipartisan support and for Israel, and that's something we have to nurture. That's something we have to protect because there are people trying to blow up the bipartisan nature of this. And I, for one, do not want to live in a season of history when Israel becomes a partisan divide. Obviously, in an election year, it's in election days, it's going to be a partisan divide on some things. But in the grand scheme, Tom, one of the reasons you and I um, feel strongly about our friendship is partly it's just because we want to be good people, good Americans, and I'm Israeli as well, but also because on this issue, there's an enormous need to work together and to trust each other and to work out differences. So again, another reason to say thank you for sharing with our audience your perspective. It's an important perspective, and I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for your friendship. I'll leave you the final word.
Well, you said it beautifully. I'm you and I have been friends for a long time, and I think it's important for everyone to understand. Israel can never be a partisan issue. It cannot be just a Jewish issue, as you're one of the reasons why your show is so successful is that Christians and Jews care deeply, deeply about the state of Israel, and one of the reasons I come on your show and I talk to your viewers, even though obviously I'm a little Jewish kid, is that I'm enormously supportive of those Christian listeners who care and feel the passion that I care about the importance of the state of Israel. So this is an American issue. It's an Israeli issue, and we're going to work together to protect the state of Israel.
Ambassador Tom Nides, thank you so much. You served very faithfully and well as the Biden-Harris U.S. ambassador to Israel for almost the entire, 3 out of the 4 years, and they were significant. I think you had three different prime ministers that you worked with: Netanyahu, Naftali Bennett, who I just interviewed in the U.S. at a conference, and Yair Lapid. All three are friends of mine, and you work very closely with all of them. And that's why your perspective is really important. So thank you. Stay safe, you and your family. And Lord willing, we'll get to see each other, and we'll see when the smoke clears and we find out who's going to lead the country for the next 4 years. We'll talk again.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
it very much.
thank you,
All right,
buddy.
have a great night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.